And welcome esports fans to our semifinal matchup here for the PCS. And, we started with 10 teams at the beginning of this split, Clement. It has all come down to only 3. One team we already know, Beyond Gaming, is going on to Worlds, but there are 2 squads that are going to be fighting for that second World spot and a spot in the finals tomorrow. Hey everybody, I'm Pyrotechnics, he is Clement, and our wonderful sponsors are, of course, CTBC Bank, China Airlines, Chunghwa Telecom, and Caliber. Thank you for making the PCS possible now, Clement. Are you still cooling down after last night? Because, man, what a series.
Oh, I have gone through a lot of stress, a lot of doubting about myself, but, I have been one of those people that has been saying that PSG, for me, has looked rather weak throughout the split. Don't get fooled by their flawless record. They have had a lot of close calls, and I think a reckoning was overdue to come.
I think you're right, and we finally got to see it here. And, what's interesting about close calls, I think the most recent one that comes to mind, apart from this series, was one of the games that this team last matched up against J-Team. So I'm really excited to see what happens today. J-Team, for their side, it's an incredible story. They're looking to make the finals for the first time in the PCS. Obviously, it's been a while since we've seen this squad at Worlds. We didn't have this league when they last went to the big dance,
Yeah, and they also had Fofo back then, so this would be a completely new J-Team in a lot of senses going back to the world stage, if they do make it, of course. And I do want to say that I feel like J-Team has had a very long playoff season. You mentioned this, they played 15 games so far, and we've seen a lot of growth coming out from this team, especially with their matchups against J-Team here, so against PSG especially. I think a couple things we will be looking forward to is the Aphelios, the Gangplank, and a lot of those picks they did get off of their series with PSG. As we take a look at the bracket, J-Team, as we mentioned, have basically played the whole bracket, the full 5 games most of the way.
They have had a gauntlet. It's insane. It's like max games in the best of 3. Then they get 0-3'd by PSG, but some of those games were closer than they looked on paper. And then almost a full series against Hong Kong Attitude, and the Herculean effort against Machi to qualify for this semifinal matchup. And PSG, by comparison, they played 8. It's half the game's difference in the playoffs. PSG certainly don't want to be snoozing for this one because, they might sleep in and find they missed Worlds.
For sure, but I would say that PSG are the ones that might be coming in a little bit more fatigued. They did play just yesterday 5 games against Megabank Beyond Gaming, so it's 10 games for them within a span of something like 36 hours. That is a very, very taxing on them. So I do think today is about the adaptations of PSG and whether J-Team can continue their rather strong early game performance against PSG in their previous series. Even though it was a 3-0, PSG never got over a 2,000 gold lead by 20 minutes against J-Team. So that is a very key thing to remember. The tempo game plan from PSG has not been working out.
No, that's true. We have seen a number of games really decided, honestly, in some cases, sort of last minute, down to a couple of team fights. We certainly saw a lot of back and forth in that final game yesterday against Megabank Beyond Gaming. And, well, we will see if J-Team, we're studying that one very closely, see if they can find that formula and really crack the code and take down PSG. That would be monumental if the team that went completely undefeated in the summer, they had not lost a series since MSI. I mean, it's crazy to think about. Obviously, the playoffs are a whole nother story, and anything can happen. But it's such a huge upset. It's kind of hard to understate it. But I want to see if J-Team can find those answers. They seem to have a lot of power on their side. They seem to have grown a lot, and we saw a couple of cracks in the armor of PSG, most notably up in the top side. Hanabi, I don't know how else to put this, did not look good.
Yeah, there were a lot of problems from PSG. I think if you look at the individual level, it definitely came down to, I think, River not really performing in his early game, and Hanabi also not performing in teamfights. He went into 2 critical teamfights on Gnar with 0 rage bar, and also completely flubbed his Viego games. He was very fed in both of those games, but going into the Drake fight, he was the first one to die. So that's not how you want to play a reset comp.
I don't know. I was watching last night with just a mix of excitement, apprehension, anxiety, and it was just on repeat. But as far as this squad goes, there is still a lot of power here. I think Unified,
Yep.
Kaiwing, certainly the Rocks. I want to see Maple back on a big damage dealer. When they put him on Karma, it didn't really look all that great. His Zoe game was just fine. TF, no need to channel your inner Bivin. That's okay. But yeah, I think that this team can get back to form. It's just a question of, will they be able to do it? Will they be able to complete the salty run back and return to the finals to face off against Beyond Gaming? I would think absolutely this is a squad that's still favored, but after yesterday, I feel like anything can happen.
In my opinion, what they should be doing is switching over to a team fight composition. They should be giving themselves a draft that can actually take a 5v5 just head on, rather than relying on full tempo. No more utility for Maple. Please stop building lethality on your Jins. Go for team fight.
There we go. And now for J-Team on their side, they have absolutely fought, scratched, and clawed their way to this point. 15 games in the playoffs, and the last time they met, it was a 3-0 sweep by PSG. This will be a team on the hunt for redemption. They are, of course, Rest, Hana, Mission, Lilvi, and Woody. And, if we want to see a PSG team fight comp, what do you want to see out of this squad, Clement?
I think they will also be trending towards a little bit more team fighting as well. I think we have seen a lot of the pickups actually from PSG, where they prioritize the Aphelios, they prioritize the Gameplank. I think those are going to be the two most contested champions in this matchup. And weirdly enough, J-Team actually played this style because of their match with PSG. So ironically, PSG dropped their own style, but J-Team kept with it.
And J-Team, even if they have been a little bit more consistent in the style, some of the statistics don't always bear that out. Of course, having lost a number more games than PSG have, it's kind of easy to look at this and say, oh yeah, of course, PSG, much better team. But, it's been more recent trends that we're seeing this squad come up and really level up and really looking no further than that Machi Esports series where they were able to turn things around. This is a team that plays with a lot of grit. I think they have a possibility to come around and really knock out PSG talent. It would be so tough to do it, but it's possible.
Yeah, and there's a couple of stats here that I think are slightly misleading. GD at 15, as we have mentioned, has not been that one-sided for PSG. PSG is basically getting off this most of the lower tier teams, in fact. And if you look at their series, they're actually pretty even-handed, and what really made the difference were the team fights itself. In terms of just the 5v5s, we've had a lot of mishaps from Mission, unfortunately, and PSG have been able to profit from that. Also, PSG in their series had a very heavy emphasis on Aphelios. So if you give Unified that champion, it goes into the late game, it's almost an automatic win. And that's why I think that Aphelios is going to be the most contested champion for both sides right here. Indeed, PSG on the blue side already taking away the Ziggs and making sure they have the potential to first pick the Moon Man.
Absolutely. Into the picks and bans we go. Renekton ban on the red. No surprises there. Of course, we are still on patch 11.15 throughout the playoffs. Aphelios is gone officially. I like this from J-Team. Don't even give the chance for the first pick opportunity.
Yeah, this is very standard right here. Another of the couple of power picks that I think have potential to be first pick right here would be stuff like the Lee Sin. This has been Hana's best champion, and it has been River's just automatic go-to for some reason. So Lee Sin, it might favor up, and I think Gameplank is one of those picks that is, as we mentioned, very impactful because you can fight against the Camille. It provides scaling. Allows you to team fight, it's global pressure, but will come later in the draft generally.
Yeah, and I think this is another choice that actually works well for PSG is the Xin Zhao. Gives them a lot of flexibility. It really lets River get into the enemy team and do what he wants to do, set up the engagements when he can, and also just track Hana when he can throughout the game. That is going to be the Rise pickup from Mission, though, locked in, so fairly comfortable champion for him. Gives him a decent bit of variety and range, and if there's two mid laners that understand each other well through experience, it is probably Maple and Mission.
Yeah, these guys have played a lot of games against each other, starting all the way back to the LMS days for sure. And I think PSG should be very comfortable with dealing with the Rise. We saw Mawan just default to Rise over and over again, but it wasn't that impactful in the early game, and I wouldn't really put Mission as a great split pusher. This has been a continuous problem, is in a lot of teamfights, Mission just isn't there. So I don't see the Rise pick as being particularly threatening. I actually assume that J-Team might be willing to go for Lucian, which caused a lot of problems for PSG yesterday in their matchup versus Megabank Beyond Gaming. J-Team is another one of those teams that could potentially flex this pick over and over again. But what we're seeing currently in draft with the Zoe is now PSG do have a dominant mid-jungle. There is no other composition jungler that J-Team can pick to wrestle away early mid-game control from River and Maple.
And this is back to basics, too. This is what we like to see from PSG, playing to the strengths that they do have. You know, when you have players as strong as Maple and River on your squad, it makes a lot of sense to empower them as much as possible. With this last pick on the rotation, it will be the Jhin locked in to try and match the range of Lil V's Varus. So we are likely to see quite a lot of supports hitting the ban column after this.
This is an interesting pick because I don't think Unified had a good Jhin performance yesterday. We saw him just get one-tapped by Mao An's Lucian over and over again. And Jhin is not an easy champion to utilize in the team fights. You want to use Kern Call, but you need to get your execute damage. There's a lot of conditions for him to be useful that need to be met for him to be useful. So I think PSG are going for more of a pick composition once again, which is not what I thought they were trying to do. We'll see what happens. It is part of the course for their regular split performance, but in postseason, again, they have not been able to consistently get early game leads.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if it will work out for them, but we are seeing a focus, rather than on the bottom side, it actually is more top. In this ban phase 2, we've got the Jace removed. The Camille's going to match from PSG, so interestingly enough, the Camille hasn't made an appearance. Either side has been honestly prioritized a little bit less by a number of teams. I'd like to see this one picked up. I mean, if you're tuning in from the LCK, we saw that in Game 1 picked up, although it did proceed to get bullied pretty immediately. Spoiler alert. Kennen banned away too.
Yeah, it looks like J-Team are just setting up for an early GP. I'm not sure about this comp for mid J-Team. I feel like their mid jungle is fairly weak, and they need some early game options to play around. The bottom lane is going to be uncontested. If they go for the GP, which I think is a very important pick in the matchup, their map is a little too wide open. But however, PSG are going to make the decision for them. They're just going to ban it.
Yeah, not let them do it. I was curious. I don't think they were going to get the chance to pick it for themselves, but that was the champion that Hanabi actually did look decent on yesterday in the games that they were able to win over Megabank Beyond Gaming. Back over to the J-Team side, and we'll see if they are going to wait for the counter pick for last for rest, or if they opt into something else. With the Gwen still being up, that does end up being the option, but this is not an early game choice as much.
I just want to say nobody respects the Gnar counter pick. Nobody. Absolutely no one looks like one.
The way Hanabi played it yesterday, I don't think they should.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, Rest was the first one to bring out the Gnar counter pick in the PCS as well. And this is giving me a bad sense of deja vu.
Flashbacks, Clement, flashbacks.
Yeah, we had that one team fight where, look, even Kaiwing's kind of like,
You sure? You sure about that, bro?
This is a bad trip down memory lane.
Oh, boy. Okay, so whatever they pick for the support, I mean, the Leona got flashed a little bit earlier. PSG are going to stick to their guns here and try to make this work. But, yeah, I want to see some Gnar bars looking a little bit better from Hanabi this time around. And for J-Team, ooh, man, they just keep cycling through all sorts of exciting options. I completely forgot Thresh just got left up through this entire pick ban phase. Obviously, with Aphelios not being available, he wasn't quite as prioritized. But this would be a decent bit of frontline if they want to put Woody on the Braum, and they do. So
I do like the Braum.
Looking at the whole composition, yeah.
It does counter the Jhin quite heavily. We saw yesterday in team fights, once you have the stand behind me up, not really much that the Jhin can do. Can't get the damage towards the back line. And PSG, again, they're going for a rather risky composition. This is, for me, snowball or die. J-Team have a much better scaling late game comp with 1-3-1 potential, while PSG are trying to force tempo once more. I don't think PSG need to do this. This is my main critique of PSG. Even though they are the best team at running tempo in the entire PCS, it is not the most consistent comp. You have a lot of individual fails that can happen, and if that happens, you don't have a late game to rely on. I would rather see PSG widen their margin of error rather than tunnel on what they're supposedly best at.
Yeah, when that does fail, you don't have a backup option. So, what this says, it looks like PSG are just trusting that they are going to be strong enough to win this. But, that may not be enough going forward. So maybe they're trying to hide a little bit from, of course, if they win this tomorrow's matchup. But I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to big brain this and I'm just overthinking it, Clement. It just feels to me like you're absolutely right. Like they don't want to stretch out too far. But if that fails you, it doesn't matter how good you were in the regular season. This is the last chance. You lose this and you are not going to Worlds 2021. You will have to watch from the sidelines. And I think anything less than even that first seed has got to be a disappointment for PSG talent.
Yeah, it definitely will be. So I think at least the good thing about this comp is that they have understood that Maple needs to deal damage. He can't play for full tempo, but he cannot play utility. If he's playing Twisted Fate, if he's playing Karma, then a lot of the times the team will lack carries to actually pull them through into the late game. So at least that part I sort of understand about the build is that, they are going to have a lot of agency on Maple himself. He's not going to be trying to buff up River, who I'll be honest has been having a pretty terrible playoffs and has just not been on point. A lot of early deaths coming from River, so at least he's going to be able to carry rather than trying to support River in terms of the mid jungle priority.
Yeah, and I think that's giving a lot more options to what in a lot of cases isn't always going to be your main damage dealer, but when it's Maple, you're certainly going to be the one wanting to get the executions on him. On the side of Hanabi, I really hope we see a little bit more from him today on the Gnar. I mean, I don't want to just watch one game and be like, oh well, he's terrible on Gnar. He's terrible on Gnar. No, Hanabi, he's in a counter matchup. He's usually more a weak side player. We have seen him kind of go back to that role, but if they can focus top pressure and try to shut down Rest Gwen, that can certainly help them get off to a good start. The question is, how effective will they be able to do that? And on a Zoe, you can definitely get your roam on. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a lot of trips up there.
I just want to say that I have kind of given up hope that Hanabi is going to be a great Gnar player, because we've seen this pick over the years so many times, and it's been a consistent thing where he just doesn't manage his rage bar very well. And to be fair, I think it's very hard to do. The team fights happen so frequently in this meta where you have the Drake timer at 5 minutes that a lot of times you don't have any side lane time to farm up your Mega Gnar bar at all. And, even when Rest is playing Gnar, the same thing is happening over and over again. Like, the best Gnar player, in my mind, is probably Shahu right now in the LPL. He always seems to have his Gnar bar perfectly. I don't know why, but very few people are able to do that throughout the years. And if you look at what happened yesterday, it was an absolute travesty. Like, he came in with 0 Gnar bar, he hopped over a wall, isolated himself, did not get any auto attacks for the first 10 seconds of a team fight, and then he missed
and then it was over
completely. So
yeah.
It was like it was actually like 0 impact Gnar. It was so I don't think, for me, I'm not putting any of my eggs into a Gnar team fight basket. I think it's purely for laning phase. It is purely for priority, and if they can achieve that, that's fine. But I'm not counting on the team fights.
Yeah, that's if it gets into the later stages of the game and PSG don't have a solid lead, that might be a little bit rough. For the J team side, they've given themselves a lot of options here. I do like the ability to go for the 1-3-1. I do like the team fight. They can be pretty slippery, but definitely keeping an eye on Rest up in the top side and see what he has to contend with. On the other hand, counter pressure coming out too could be from Hana and Mission once he dings 6. So definitely a lot of roam ability for this J-Team squad as well. Let's see if they can hold on in the early game. They have come close the last time these two teams met to taking a game off of PSG, but it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened all year. Even if you go back into the spring split, they weren't able to find one, but they saw everything change yesterday when it was proved that, in fact, even gods of the PCS can bleed. Clement, looking at the two compositions, just overall, I think I know what you're going to say, but whose do you like better here?
If PSG are playing with the regular season form, then I do think that PSG can overrun J-Team. J-Team are a very slow team. None of their lanes should have an organic lead. Gwen is going to get pushed in by Gnar. The same thing is going to happen for Ryze. And in the bot lane, it's kind of a wash. So if you just extrapolate from the laning phase, then PSG have a very strong snowballing team. I very seriously doubt that J-Team can hold on to their mid lane tower in this setup. They want to scale, they want to go for 1-3-1, but you have to have that defensive presence for your side lanes to continue to farm up. And I just don't think that's really possible when you have such strong poke coming in with Jhin and Zoe. So, like, overall, the analytical side of my brain still favors PSG draft, but I have to say, given the context of what has happened in the last 24 hours, I feel like PSG are taking a massive risk. I'm not sure their mentality can hold up to losing on a composition that was very similar to this one yesterday. And because of those reasons, I'm actually leaning towards JT. This is theoretically not a better draft, but it's a safer one.
Well, it's a bold strategy. We'll see if it pays off for them as PSG take to the Rift up against J-Team in a win-or-go-home matchup here. The winner of this best-of-5 series will be guaranteed a spot at Worlds representing the PCS. We don't know which seed yet, but we certainly will know that team will be there, and it's going to be an exciting one for sure. No shenanigans to start things off. Now, we see a number of teams in this region that will do that, but not really a J-Team specialty. A little bit more by the numbers.
Minions have spawned.
And just to go over the setup a little bit more, if we look at our bot lane, it is double cleanse. You really do not expect anything to happen there. I think the Jhin, we have actually seen Unified sometimes just go with the boot start as well. This time around, there is a melee support in Braum who's not going to put out a lot of damage. Doesn't really have all-in potential, so he's going to keep on to the longsword. But in general, with the with 3 pots and double cleanses, you should expect all the action to naturally gravitate towards the mid lane. I think this is where PSG can snowball the most. Top lane, I still assume that Hanabi will find a lead just in this matchup, just the way it works, the range versus the melee. But it's going to be very hard to tower dive in towards the top side. So I think the main thing is for J-Team to try to play defensive mid lane and try to get onto the later phases.
Yeah, and Rest also going for that Ghost too. Instead of the Flash or even the Ignite as we get things underway. Just a little bit of trading down bottom, but it's really just more love taps. I want to keep an eye on River this game too, because obviously where he goes is going to probably dictate some of the early action and tempo plays from PSG, but you know, we didn't see him on Xin Zhao yesterday. He was pretty much all Lee Sin or Olaf. This is a champion that can also get, you know, right in your face and stick and, you know, try to make these plays, but I am a little curious about River's performance. You know, in the regular season, he was far and away my MVP. Now I'm kind of questioning it a little bit.
Yeah, River at the later end of this split has been looking a little bit weird. I think a lot of times he goes in too far in team fights, and he just ends up dying. So a little too ham at times, not the best coordination in team fights with the rest of his team. I do want to mention the continuation of keeping Ryze safe. If we look at the map right now, we just saw J-Team place double wards on both sides of the river. Very cognizant of the potential for an early Xin Zhao gank. We have seen River do a lot of these just one-side clears into level 3 ganks. So, you know, Ryze is making sure that that's not going to happen. He's going to be able to build his tier up perfectly. And when you have 3 potentially pushing lanes like PSG does, what you should be doing on the Xin Zhao is just trying to reveal yourself as little as possible. If you do that, then the enemy has to assume that you could be in all 3 lanes. And that just means that they can't gank anywhere. So
it's all psychological warfare. Just want to make sure that they keep on the down low and stop Hana from doing anything. But there will be scuttles traded either side. Clearly, J-Team have done their homework, and you know I think this is a team that certainly does. They are very well coordinated when they come in with the game plan. It's just sometimes those plans sort of fall to pieces when they face off against the tougher squads. I feel like adaptability has always been a little bit of an issue, but that's the regular season. That's the old J-Team. Meanwhile, Unified taking a lot of damage early, forced to flash, and followed by Lil V for first blood.
Oh, I can't believe that just happened. Unified is not running Hail of Blades, so he will lose these auto attack trades, and Lil V just opened up on him. We're gonna watch the play once again. You have to pay attention to the red circle underneath Little V right here. He just got it, 1, 2, 3, and he had the Vengeance passive as well. So it was one shot of Hail Blades and then Vengeance passive into the straight auto attack chase down after the Winter's Bite. So very unfortunate for Unified. He just, you know, left his minions, and the timing was perfect for Varus to start that.
Yeah, it was right after the last shot from Jin, so he's reloading during that entire cycle. And I really don't think he expected that one, and I don't think we did either. You know, talking at the beginning of the game about how the bottom lane probably was going to be a little bit of trades, but no damage or no deaths because of the double cleanse. Turned out to not be the case, Clement, as we do have our first blood for JT. Meanwhile, Maple looked like he was maybe trying to fake mission out, but nothing doing there.
And that does change things quite a bit, because right now, if Woody flashes on Unified, he's dead. Hana comes over, that's an easy pickup kill. PSG cannot actually push their wave anymore. They have to give up priority. I think that it's probably best for Unified just to be farming underneath his tower. If he goes out, he's just gone. So he has to wait for his summoners, and J-Team know this. So this is a very good invade. They have the numbers advantage, and they're going to try and shut down Kaiwing for even more punishment.
Oh, River does look to try and collapse in as Maple is able to find the Sleepy Trouble bubble onto mission, but no execution available just yet. That'd be a little bit early here as they go in for round 2. Hana taking a lot more damage than he was dishing out, however. Woody at his back, forcing the flash away from River. It's Hana who does go down. Mission tagging his way in, looking for Kaiwing this time to get the Winter's Bite proc off, but Maple still on the front line, and River is coming back for more. So J-Team, they bite off a lot more than they can chew here as a pair of flashes get spent.
CP Trouble bubble?
Through. Woody gets betrayed! Oh no!
That was very ill-conceived from J-Team. I felt like their timing was a little bit off. If the Realm Warp happened just a second earlier, I could see that working, but they didn't seem like they were on the same page. So we'll watch this again. Hana goes out and then comes back in again. Now, the critical thing here is just watching Mission when he takes over to level 6. I want to see if he got Realm Warp midway through that fight, because, you know, if he did actually come in just a bit sooner, yes, they could have picked off River, but this was kind of a low percentage play to start off. If you notice, Xin Zhao's one level ahead of Hana at this point, and Maple still arrives here first. The exhaust is also, there's actually double exhaust coming in from the yeah, there was an exhaust traded back and forth on each side there, so I'm just not sure. J-Team, I think they were telling themselves that Mission could arrive faster than he actually could.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a misfire, and it nets PSG a little bit of an advantage in terms of gold and kills at the moment. But, you know, back to the status quo, Unified's still going to have a little bit of a hard time here as the wave is just kind of being kept from him for a little bit. Up at the top, we do see that advantage in farm that we do expect from this lane, but, you know, Rest is perfectly fine that there hasn't been any attention on him. He's not playing for the laning phase. He's on a Gwen.
Yeah, he's just waiting for the late game to scale up, and we have seen in team fights, especially with something like the Ghost, Gwen does so much more damage compared to something like the Gnar. It's much easier to use, you have great chase down potential, and just the scaling factor alongside the Rise is what really makes this champion work in kind of the double AP 131. Now going back to J-Team's game plan overall, though, I don't think they should be trying to make too many risky plays. They have the scaling, like we mentioned. They don't need to force things. So I'm not sure what the logic is behind going for, like, even if you have a slight lead, if it's a 55 to 45 play, I think you leave it be. I think you just say it's not worth the risk to allow Zoe to snowball.
Right. Yeah, you got to be careful when you you're starting to get a little greedy. You see maybe there's going to be some kills to be had. Now, we will have a Herald started up here by PSG, but they seem to be ceding ground a little bit, and Shelly doesn't reset. So, oh no, there it goes. Everything just goes a little pear-shaped now. But J-Team have brought everyone to this party, and Unified is not here. So, this should be ceded over, but Maple is still looking for the kills. That's going to be a Sleepy Trouble Bubble landing, and they will secure it. Here comes the big Gnar, and that's going to be a pretty big against-the-wall smash as Hana gets caught between a rock and a hard place. The curtain call opens up. Lil V nowhere for him to go, and even though Rest was trying to get a kill onto Kaiwing, he will be able to skip and slash him down to size. Even so, PSG coming up huge with a triple kill for River.
Yeah, that was a perfect condition for Hanabi right there. We already saw the Dragon's Rage go out onto River, so it meant that there was no disengage, and he pretty much just walked into the pit and got a triple kill there. It doesn't matter if PSG even lose a couple of members in that fight. They got the snowball onto Maple at this point, so we'll watch this again. I think the critical thing here is, unfortunately, J-Team did reset the Herald. You could see the aggro here. They should have tried to rush this down just a little bit sooner. They needed a smite earlier. Hana was a little bit too greedy with that one. And if they smited here, they would have had a perfect situation to back out. Jin would not have been able to get into this fight. And look at the way Hana plays this. He uses the Dragon's Rage right in front of Hanabi. That's an open mat invitation for the Mega Nard to just come in and smash your entire team. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that was the correct play.
What was that about low percentage plays and what J-Team should be doing, Clement? I don't know. I seem to remember you saying something before we started. Yeah, PSG find themselves with a healthy lead. They don't have Herald, but I don't think they're too worried about it.
Well,
actually ends up getting
the Xin Zhao, it's kind of hard for River to have a bad game at this point.
Yeah, River. I've seen Fed River do pretty gnarly things, so we'll have to see if that trend keeps true. Meanwhile, it's a bit of a lane reset, but not much of one. Woody actually having to roam up here because he's the one holding on to Rift Herald, and they look for Hanabi. He's staying safe enough. It's a little hard to gank Gnar at the best of times, so we'll see if they end up dropping the eye.
Yeah, that was... I felt like J-Team actually could have won that play quite decisively. Unfortunately for them, it was... I think it was just down to mechanics. Kicking the Xin Zhao, probably not the greatest idea there, even for securing Herald. I'd much rather save the kick for the Gnar instead. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And they also just reset the Herald, smited a little bit too late. That could have gone very, very differently for J-Team, but unfortunately, that's just something that happens. Unified, I don't know why you're pushing up so far when nobody...
Yeah! Rest was right there. Does chase him down with the needlework for a little bit. Doesn't get that much damage on it, so he can still stick around in lane for now, but Unified is a little hungry for farm, and he's got to be careful. Now Hana goes on a roam down bot.
Yeah, and he just burned his cleanse there, so there's no getting away from the slows after this one anymore. And it's kind of weird from Unified to see him in this state. You rarely ever see Unified. Woody just walks
hold up a second. Yeah, Woody just gets completely caught out for a second. Now they do actually look to try and turn it around as he immediately flashes away. Good cover from the rest of J-Team. And they're actually just going to drop Rift Herald down mid.
That was an interesting Herald, because you just lost mid push. Okay. I don't think this Herald does anything.
No, it distracts PSG for a little bit. That's about it. Huh.
Okay, that was definitely a mistake. Yeah. I think J-Team made two mistakes right there. Woody would have been completely fine, but he actually used the Unbreakable on the wrong direction. He did not Unbreakable anything. So, yeah, just a couple of mishaps here from J-Team, and these are going to be costly because they're giving a lot of time and snowball potential for PSG. You don't want to be face-checking into a Dragon Soul fight early on into this game if you want to scale for 1-3-1.
No, the Dragon Timer is actually really good here for PSG. They finish off the mountain at about 12 minutes and 50 seconds, and we have an Infernal Rift as well. Ooh, boy. It's going to be a spicy start.
Yeah, this has not been a very tight game from J-Team. I think they have... It's kind of weird to see this from J-Team because usually my main criticism is that they're very content to just sit back and farm and do nothing. But I feel like they're a little bit angsty right now. I feel like they can smell worlds at their fingertips and they're trying to do a little bit too much. So the Herald drop, definitely a mistake. The Herald Force is kind of weird. Just a lot of small mistakes out.
Seeing PSG turned mortal yesterday, that can change your perspective pretty drastically. But J-Team have been making some uncharacteristic mistakes, and this is only game one of a best-of-5 series. But every game counts, as we saw last night. Hana gets a little bit of a late leash there from Mission on the Krugs, as they will look to rotate around. But they need to stem the bleeding for a little while. They do have a fantastic late game if they can make it, but they do find themselves down a little bit of gold, and they're not getting a lot done with what edges they do have.
Yeah, I think it's just waited out for now for J-Team. Their best situation is if they can sneak one of these Drakes. The next one will be Infernal, so if you're thinking about Infernal Soul going over to Jin and Zoe, that's a very scary prospect. I don't want to face that. Even in the late game, it gives PSG an out. So if they get the soul, then they don't really have to worry about potentially this Jin falling off with a lethality build once more.
Yeah, speaking of that lethality build, we do see coming in for the Jin, it is going to be that Eclipse polished up. And the earliest mythic item in this game, of course, was that Gourd Drinker from River. Meanwhile, River, speaking of, he does actually catch Mission out. It's a nice win, becomes lightning over the wall, but Mission is able to flash out of it. And this is going to prompt a Herald start for PSG this time. Very messy last time around. We'll see how it turns out here as Lilvi and Woody have come to play.
Yep, there's pure 4-man stack on the Herald. I don't think J-Team are going to contest this, and for PSG, it should just be a mid-lane push. The quickest way to crumble a 1-3-1's defenses is just to go mid, get 2 towers preferably, and then transfer your strength to the side lanes, make sure they can't farm up. That's usually the strategy. So I think it's, we're just going to see a little bit more farm on Zoe, make sure she gets her first item, and then the mid lane push is going to come.
Yeah, Maple knocks down tower up top. We're going to see River there as well, and I think they might actually drop Herald here.
They should save it.
Yeah. No, okay. River's just going to back. That makes sense. I was wondering about that. That's not a big minion wave.
Yeah, it's not the best bang for your buck there. The plates aren't there anymore, so it's much more about strategically how to dismantle the other composition rather than doing anything yourself. At this point, PSG have a very strong snowballing comp. If you look at Xin Zhao, an early Sterix Gauge just means you win every single team fight. You can brute force on Xin Zhao, just engage on the first person you see, and you're going to have the survivability to even take guys like Reston. You can full tank for quite a while, and you also have the Crescent Guard. And there's basically one melee champion that you need to worry about. So I think River at this point, he can start hard forcing fights.
Ooh, they're actually going to pop this down bottom. And yeah, River, he has been hard forcing quite a lot just to mix success. And in playoffs, we have been seeing it not always work out. But that triple kill early game really changed a lot of the calculus, as they will get the tower down bottom side. Let's see if they shepherd Shelly around a little bit more, as Rest is the only one there to really intercept this. Meanwhile, pressure being matched on the top, but Mission stays a little too long, and Hanabi actually runs straight into him as he's going to try to Realm Warp out. Gets knocked and interrupted against the wall. Hanabi says, "Hear me roar."
Yeah, that was a little bit too easy for Hanabi to pick that one up. Mission thought about going back into the Realm Warp. I don't think he really had any play right there, and now we have another team fight.
Yeah, they don't see the plate opening up into the curtain call. They do find an easy 1-2 onto Hana, and the rest of J-Team scrambling to run away from this one as Maple, he was targeted, but was able to pop on the Hourglass. And Woody, oh boy, it's an ace in the hole right there. Maple picking up another.
Straight over the wall. This is the critical push here. As soon as Maple found his first mythic, PSG just went completely all in. They grouped up, they went for an engage here, and I think J-Team just got stuck in the rotation. They didn't think that PSG would be pushing for 2 towers necessarily, and you could see that J-Team just got caught rotating down from mid lane. They thought mid lane was going to be the most important part, and props to PSG. This really caught a lot of people off guard. Conventionally, usually you just see the Herald in mid. J-Team caught in rotation, and I think they went a little bit too far forward. Going up this far against the Jhin and Leona didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. They're also fighting with uneven numbers here. The Gnar can even still TP to this team fight. So
yeah,
it was a little bit weird to see J-Team.
He didn't get to use his buttons that game, or that play. He was just CC'd for days. It was a good setup by PSG, but you're right. Really, the continuing questionable decision making, or at least in the heat of the moment, it nets PSG not only a lot of damage on bot tower with the second Shelly charge, but they also managed to secure the Infernal, and it is going to be Soul Point at 18.5 minutes, Clement. We've seen this from PSG in a lot of games. The tempo plan is all coming together.
Yep, it's coming together perfectly, and I think the big difference this time around is this is the biggest lead that PSG had over J-Team, in the postseason, and if you consider yesterday games as well, this is PSG just firing on all cylinders. So when the tempo plan comes together, it can look very good. We still are in a snowballing meta. A lot of the games are very one-sided, and this is what PSG are best at. I think they have made tweaks to this comp overall, though. They understand that Twisted Fate is actually not a priority in this comp. They still need Maple on a damage dealer. So, this is something that I can stand behind.
It's playing to the strengths, but also making sure that they don't give themselves too many weaknesses. It was weird to see Maple on a utility pick, and now the curtain call is going to be opened up. They actually do find Hana once again. I really love that Zenith Blade combination they've been pulling off, but it's a good turnaround as J-Team disengage and collapse onto Kaiwing as the PSG play backfires.
Yeah, Kaiwing going over the wall was a little too much. For me there.
I don't think. Have you ever seen a caster curse like work in literal real time? Because I think that just happened.
Yep, you're absolutely right, man.
I am too powerful, Clement.
Whoever you want to see in Worlds, you should just start praising the other team, and I think you're gonna get your wish.
You know, it's too much power. I have to exercise responsibility. I can't cheer for anybody. I can't praise anybody. Everyone is terrible. There.
It was a little bit weird because clearly their solo lanes were not underneath their tower, and no one could follow Kaiwing. I understand trying to go for someone that isn't going to be able to be protected by Braum, but just a little bit of overreach right there. But PSG, they're still fine. They're not going to get punished too hard by this one. Mission is still in full farm mode. We haven't seen Mission in a team fight just yet. And this was my main worry for J-Team, is that I felt their comp was a little bit too slow. If you look at a 1-3-1, typically what you want is at least a bottom lane where you can focus on, or at least red side counter pick. But in this situation, J-Team actually revealed all of their solo lane cards first. Mission at least going to get out this time, though.
Yeah, that time Hanabi came from the correct angle. He didn't wrap around the side, but really, it's not just been like kind of getting caught out. They just haven't had as much vision either, and you're starting to see that they're learning their lesson a little bit, trying to slam down a few wards. But you're right, the game is a little bit slow here, and J-Team, they might run out of time before they get any options. There's a lot of standing gold on those turrets that they haven't been able to knock down. They've barely been able to dent some of them. Look at that mid turret. That was where they dropped the Herald that they won a very tough fight over. And yeah, it just has been questionable decision making in some cases, and this PSG snowball is huge. Baron Nashor now in the Rift, and we've seen this film before. PSG just going in, sweeping things out, making sure that they can keep J-Team away, and they will try to end this in relatively quick fashion, I would think.
Yeah, it's very easy for PSG to set up, but for J-Team, they do have a chance. I think their win condition is Rest finding the backline versus Unified and Maple. If he can get there, get a teleport flank, and Unified is in current call, he can force him to shut down the ultimate. It takes away a lot of the teamfight damage from PSG, and he can clean up the carries by himself. It's definitely possible for a Gwen to just do that. However, they don't have the flanking wards just yet, and PSG is playing from blue side, so they have ramp control very easily. It's typically much harder for the red side team to come down from the from both sides of the blue blue area compared to the red side team going into the river through the bot lane try. So we'll see how J-Team needs to set this up, but I think at the very least they should be trying to push out the bottom lane, and maybe that will provide the angle for Rest. If it's just a full-on front to back team fight, there is zero chance that J-Team get this.
Yeah, they're running out of time, however. The Dragon has spawned, and down the ramp go J-Team. They're actually going to force this by starting the Dragon off themselves and try to get PSG coming to them, but there's a Sleepy Trouble Bubble landing onto Hana. He does take a little bit of damage. Woody is going to frontline for him with the Unbreakable on the side. Does catch a little bit of damage, but now Dragon aggroed on both sides with the ramp controlled by PSG. Kaiwing looking for an opening around the side. This is going to come down to a smite fight, you have to think, as Maple still threatens around the angle. This one's going, and gone. It's going to be taken by J-Team, but do they get out alive?
Five-man crescent.
PSG just closes
the four
and delete every single one of them. Rest is trying to get away from this, but with the flashes, follow-throughs, the skip and slash, I don't think he's going anywhere but the fountain.
I'm sorry, Hanabi. I shouldn't have doubted you. You've been nothing but clutch on the Gnar. I can't believe I said your Gnar was terrible. I can't believe I've given up hope in you. I should have been more faithful. I am so sorry. We'll watch this fight again. I think this was a low percentage play from J-Team. If you look at Rest's positioning, he is nowhere close to Maple or Unified. So the two long-range carries can just open up on them. Hana does find the steal, but then the fireworks happen. River goes in for a massive 5-man Crescent Guard into a 4-man Mega Gnar by Hanabi. Actually, that was a 5-man. That was double penta AoE crowd controls getting slammed onto J-Team. And I gotta say, they just closed this chapter. PSG, there's no way they lose this game. Whew. I'm gonna curse them as hard as I can, but there is no way they lose.
You know, give him a challenge, Clement, because that looked way too easy. It just was the PSG claptrap shutting on J-Team. They didn't need the Dragon Soul. It was all the bait. And they managed to grab the Baron buff off the back half of it. Just, this is why we talk about PSG as being, you know, up until yesterday, such an untouchable squad. It's because they do stuff like this. So now they're looking to close this one out. And, you know, you talked about low percentage plays from J-Team, and I feel like that's just been the story of this team in Game 1. It really seemed like maybe they just got stars in their eyes about Worlds. They started to try and make plays early. They got some success with Lil V finding the 2v2 kill, but it kind of went downhill from there. Here's one on the side, but he's spotted.
That has been the thing about J-Team is I think individually they're actually a very skilled team. In the PCS, they had Mission and Rest are some of the best laners, and we have a Realm Warp Engage coming. Okay, it's actually Realm Warp to nowhere, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were going to try to flank. Okay, never mind.
Hana was thinking about it, but he's like, team? Where are we going?
Yeah, Rest wasn't there, so I was a little bit surprised about that. I'm not sure what the ultimate was for. Huh.
Maybe they're just trying to chase him away. I'm not really sure. J-Team, they definitely, considering what happened last night, you would think PSG would be the team with jitters. That's certainly not the case right now. They are playing with fire. They're playing with a lot of confidence. And Hanabi is honestly making up for his performance.
Yeah, far more impactful. Lil V almost getting taken down here. There
we go. Woody tanking through the curtain calls, but they can afford to take this one nice and easy. They don't have to go all in. They've already opened up an inhibitor on bottom. Hanabi going to be able to do it himself. He's got the Gnar bar ready and available, and Woody nearly gets deleted by Maple over the wall, and Hanabi, he just chucks the house at him to get the finisher. Flashes, jumps over, and gets the two-man knock against the wall. They want to end it right here, right now. Sub 27 minutes. Hanabi does go down, and that is going to stop the push for now. They are going to go right back to inhibitor number 2, and without Woody, it's still a 4v4 for the moment.
Where was this Hanabi yesterday? Watching Mega Gnars in teamfights is something that basically didn't happen. But Hanabi today is a completely different person. Every single one of these teamfights, he's had impactful ultimates. He does die there, but, you know, for double inhibs, that's perfectly okay. And I just wonder what, like, the coaching staff has talked to PSG, what the adaptations have been. If they win today, I think Ray Richu has got a lot of questions.
I'm already looking forward to it. But yeah, it really is just such a night and day performance, and it all gets started by Maple just getting a brilliant deletion there on the exit kill. That was nice to see too. But yeah, I can't. You know, I don't want to praise him. I don't want to curse him again. But Hanabi is just looking so much better, so much different than he was in the games yesterday, and they haven't changed that much in the comp, Clement. It's a little bit different. It plays to the strengths of Maple being on a damage dealer, but clearly it seems like the difference is all mental.
Yeah, it could be. I think there was some good prep talk here. Maybe they had a good huddle, remove some obstacles or fix their communications, but something definitely has happened to this PSG squad. On the flip side, J-Team, they're finding it hard to engage, and they just don't have damage at this point. Rest is pretty far behind.
Yeah. Still thinking about that late game, but it's not going to happen at this rate. And as they just open up, the teleport comes in for Rest, but he has to run to the front line anyways, and he goes into his own stasis just to buy a little time, but that's just going to be him going down. A knock against the wall. Hanabi gets one, and he didn't really even need more here as PSG just charged down the line, forcing the flash out of Woody, and he is gone as the double kill comes in for Maple and the ace for PSG. That will be it. It took them just under 29 minutes. But after the doubts and questions of yesterday, we have an answer. PSG, they may be mortal, but they will absolutely not go quietly into the night. Game 1 up over J-Team.
PSG, their only Achilles heel has been Beyond Gaming this split. Against J-Team, still flawless so far. This was a very peculiar game because I felt like the early game did not actually go as smoothly as PSG might have wanted. They lost the bot lane priority very early on, But it was the Herald fight that got them back in. You had Xin Zhao with 4 kills right off the bat there, and it was going to be very difficult from that point onward. And I feel quite bad for J-Team because I felt like they had a much better chance with this draft than the game itself actually indicated. There was a couple very obvious mistakes that happened that were completely preventable. If they just smited early on the Herald, it would have been fine. If they actually dropped the Herald for some use rather than, I have no idea what Woody was doing there, but
yeah,
they didn't
a lot
really
of
utilize their early game at all. So it's just I'll say this again, though. I feel like J-Team could have drafted a lot better, given that they were around red side 1-3-1. They did not utilize counter picks. None of their solo lanes were counter picks. All of them were blind, and even their bot lane was countered. So if you want to run red side 1-3-1, the main reason it works is because your solo lanes actually have priority. This was way too slow of a game, and they still nearly got away with it. But I would like to see in future games that they actually just hold on to top lane until last pick. I feel like Rest has a champion pool where he should be able to counter out Hanabi, whatever the blindside pick is.
Yeah, and we have seen Hanabi, he tends to be on the weak side a lot more often than not, and he had struggled yesterday. So certainly a reasonable assumption that you can probably play to a strength that way. We'll see if J-Team actually are able to find an answer in the next game. Maybe they just had a little bit of jitters. This has been such a long road for them. Keep in mind, this was their 16th game in the playoffs already, nearly full series, pretty much back to back to back. But they've had a little bit of time to rest and recover, whereas PSG were the ones coming in we thought might be a little fatigued. We thought maybe we could have been experiencing a little bit of mental boom, but clearly that's not the case, as they go right back to a strategy that has worked for them time and time again, and it continues to be flawless against the likes of J-Team. Yeah, I mean, mechanically or analytically at least, what J-Team can do, we already talked about changing it up in the draft, but it does seem like there's also a bit of a mentality block. Like, those weird decisions on a number of key plays seem to be holding them back. And do you think that is just, looking at Worlds, looking ahead, or maybe just having to face up against the Titans that are PSG?
I feel like J-Team has always been a team that does not manage their aggression very well. They don't manage their aggression in terms of the context of the game. If you're running this comp for most of the early game, you just try to sit tight. You don't take,
yeah.
Like, even if it's 60-40 in your favor, I don't think you take the play. And I think what they should change in the later drafts is they need to stop giving Maple so much space. Giving him the Zoe versus Ryze matchup is just, he gets an open canvas to paint whatever he wants to. And I think the better solution here is actually to get an early game champion for Mission. I don't think he's actually a great scaler, and I don't think you want Mission to be split pushing. Like, Mission did not have a very good split pushing game. I feel like Rest actually has much better senses when it comes to playing 1-4. So in this draft particularly, I would have preferred for, like, let's say Mission to have something like a Syndra, though it was banned out, to counter out the Zoe, and you can still go into a split pushing comp later, but at least have early impact on Mission, where I think he is much more comfortable with, rather than late game side lane duty.
And speaking of painting a picture, there we see it right there on the canvas. Pretty big snowballing gold lead for PSG. It really got off to a start with the big 3-4 kills that were basically handed straight into the pocket of River, and he kind of ran with that from there. Really good plays around side lanes, really good collapses from PSG we've seen so many times. And yes, of course, Maple will win the MVP award with a perfect KDA, just everywhere he needed to be, and he was absolutely sniping left, right, and center of the map.
Yeah, got so many shots onto the back line. I think that's the key thing about that. Even with the Braum pick, they were still able to find picks, and it's just kind of remarkable how he's able to snipe out Lil V or snipe out Woody, who is the main tank on the team.
He really bends those paddle stars, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's just so weird that he's able to do it. And this is something that I think you should really copy from what Beyond Gaming did yesterday, as you take away LeBlanc Zoe and even consider the Syndra for Maple. You don't want him on any early snowball champions that actually provide damage to themselves. Twisted Fate is okay, but the rest of the big three, Zoe, Syndra, and LeBlanc, again, I think will be a death knell for any other team.
Well, we're going to have to see if they make that adaptation. J-Team find themselves down one. We'll see if they can fire back right after this brief break.